All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nicci Neal. I'm one of the business development managers with the AWS GovCloud region. I primarily focus on our federal civilian customers. And in this role, I spend a lot of time talking with government agencies, speaking with both technology partners as well as systems integrators and consulting companies that are building out solutions and delivering them on behalf of the federal government. Really building an awareness of the GovCloud region, but more importantly, listening and really understanding their mission requirements and taking that information and having it inform the types of services and the capabilities that we offer on the platform to support our customers. So every year at Public Sector Summit on the GovCloud track, we typically have at least one session that's dedicated to federal IT. And just reflecting, I thought about and looked back a bit at the types of topics and the discussions that we were having around federal IT and how they've evolved. And really how that aligns with how our customers in this space really have evolved and the types of problems and solutions that they're seeking. So, our customers are definitely becoming much more sophisticated users of AWS and on the GovCloud platform. They are architecting increasingly more sophisticated architectures, increasingly more complex. And we see a wide diversity in terms of the types of use cases that our customers are bringing to the platform. So keeping this in mind, it only seemed appropriate that even as we're talking about mission assurance, that we take some time to focus on modernization with all of the discussion that's happening as of late around modernization within federal IT and how that actually supports mission assurance. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with a lot of efforts around the Government Modernization Technology Act and some of the things that that's driving as it relates to mission assurance. So many of our customers, when they're looking to modernize and looking at their projects that they have in front of them, they're really thinking about cloud and essentially how it acts as an accelerator to their migration projects and priorities. And they see these benefits playing out in several different ways. A few we'll touch on today. First and foremost, business agility. So thinking about the flexibility that our customers have in terms of business models by using cloud in their migration projects, being able to have transparency in their resource allocation, so really granular data and getting down to understanding exactly what it's costing them essentially in terms of not only people but as well as the actual technology tools and being able to make very data-driven decisions as it relates to their business and their IT systems. Also, efficiencies around streamlining internal processes, especially around acquisition and procurement. Also, as it relates to operational resiliency and benefits in terms of productivity, there's improved security and governance, which is certainly very important as we think about mission assurance, and particularly in cloud, the benefits of automation that are really ingrained and integrated with security and governance. Rapid access to new tools and technology, so in that, in essence, having rapid experimentation. A lot of the developers having access to some of the latest and greatest tools and technology and making very quick decisions in terms of being able to infuse some of their development products with increased capability in support of mission assurance. Also, DevOps. Lots of discussion around DevOps culture and how that's instituted specifically within the federal government and within their culture, and being able to look to things like infrastructure as code and having that support some of the work that they're doing. And when we think about not only the business agility and the benefits that come through operational productivity increases, certainly that creates cost savings, which is further benefited by cloud and our cost structure and the idea of buying as a utility, pay-as-you-go pricing, not only for infrastructure, but as we've heard in several sessions today, also as it relates to software. And that overall reducing our customers' total cost of ownership. So there are a few trends in terms of what we see as we go out and speak to our customers and the types of workloads that they're targeting for IT modernization. First and foremost, data center migration continues to pretty much lead the modernization charge for our customers. Many customers are still working towards their data center closure targets in support of data center optimization initiatives. And now that there's the Green IT Executive Order, that's been very interesting with customers now looking to energy expenditures as a new benchmark or indicator of optimization. For those customers who've already worked through their data center migrations, whether that's an all-in migration or hybrid, they're now at the point where they're really fully embracing cloud and looking at it in terms of enterprise IT. And so how they're going to use that in terms of their IT service model and service delivery, not only within the enterprise, but for many of our government customers, looking at it from a shared services perspective, where they're taking these capabilities and they're leveraging it across several government agencies. Certainly governance and security services are extremely important to our customers. That's central to everything they do. Lots of discussion and interest around things like governance at scale and how to actually push these policies, these service control policies across entire enterprises. And third-party software procurement. If you think about it, being able to look at things like AWS Marketplace, which is now available in cloud, and using that as a way of standardizing the types of software that your internal organizations are using, even using it for things like version control of the types of software that's available within your organizations. Of course, we've had several customers that shared their personal stories and journeys as it relates to mission-critical applications and the migration work that they've done there. We see lately lots of interest around ERP and CRM systems, so enterprise resource planning and customer relationship management application. Many of these customers are really looking at it in terms of business impact and wanting to get the biggest bang for their buck. I think if you reference a few of the programs that were recently awarded under the Technology Modernization Fund initiative, some of the indicators were looking for things that were going to make serious business impact, increase citizens' engagement. So those are the types of systems that our customers are targeting. They're also looking at case and decision management systems, which is also interesting because there's an opportunity to, again, leverage things like SaaS applications and software that's available in the cloud for them to use that's commercially available or COTS as a baseline, and then being able to iterate and do whatever customization is necessary for them to meet their mission requirements. Backup and archival services is interesting. One would think that this would be kind of table stakes, low-hanging fruit for government agencies, really, especially when you think about how much data that they actually have. We have several agencies that have retention policies that are, indefinite for the lifelong of the republic. So cloud is, a very natural fit for these customers when they think about potential modernization or targets for modernization, especially when you think about the scalability that's available in the cloud, both for short-term as well as long-term storage, as well as really, optimize costs in long-term and short-term data retrieval. Big data analytics, we know it, love it, talk about it all the time. It's not only a topic that's of major discussion within the federal or the government space, but broadly across public sector. We already talked about the fact that the government has access to massive amounts of data and are looking for ways to leverage cloud to be able to have more efficiencies and make better use of the data that they have. And so we have customers that are doing really, really awesome, very interesting things in building out different data structures and architectures leveraging cloud technology. That includes data warehouses as well as data lakes, and we're excited because in a few minutes we're actually going to have a customer share with you a bit of what they're doing around data lakes and modernization. Also, customers are benefited by a lot of the real or near real-time analytics capabilities that are available to them in utilizing cloud. And so, of course, this really aids a lot of the decision management systems that are used by our customers. And finally, disaster recovery. Obviously, this is table stakes. Customers have to have a strategy in terms of DR and continuity of operations. Our customers have already been architecting for high availability in GovCloud, especially now that we've got the third availability zone that's online for the existing GovCloud region. But many of our customers are getting ahead of the second GovCloud region launch that's coming this year and really already thinking about how they can leverage that when it becomes available to do multi-region architectures. So why are these customers choosing to modernize on GovCloud in particular? If you were in the prior session, you've already heard some of my colleagues talk a little bit about GovCloud, what it is, and why our customers use it. So it is an AWS region that was intentionally built for our customers who, one, want to use AWS Cloud. So they really appreciate the agility, the scalability, the cost savings, and the constant innovation that we offer to our customers on the AWS Cloud platform. But these customers have data and workloads that are extremely sensitive, and they're either require compliance with a specific compliance framework, or they might be classified as controlled and classified information, and as a result, they need to meet very strict regulatory and compliance requirements. These customers also really appreciate the fact that the GovCloud region itself is isolated. It's a community cloud with vetted users, so they're working on a platform with users that have very similar security concerns, very similar classifications with respect to data, as well as similar risk posture. We talk about a few of the compliance frameworks specifically that our customers are able to architect for compliance with on the region. First and foremost, FedRAMP, or Federal Risk Authorization Management program. GovCloud is authorized at the high baseline. So for your customers that are operating FISMA, high data and workloads, they're able to architect for compliance in the GovCloud region. For customers that are managing export controlled data, they're able to architect and operate in a way that allows them to remain compliant with ITAR, our International Traffic in Arms Regulations. For our customers that are supporting defense, we allow customers to architect for compliance with DoD security requirements, guidelines, impact levels 4 and 5. So it's the highest level of compliance for unclassified information for the Department of Defense, as well as DFARS. For our law enforcement customers, those that are operating in justice and public safety, that are dealing with criminal justice information, customers are able to be compliant with CJIS, or Criminal Justice Information Services Security Policy. For those who are familiar with encryption and networking requirements within the federal government, you understand that FIPS 140-2 endpoints are also extremely important to customers in this space. Those are available to our customers in this region, as well as an underlying compliance with a very foundational framework, which is NIST, specifically 800-171 and Special Publication 800-53. So what are things that we're doing as the GovCloud team to be able to support our customers that are looking at undertaking modernization as a means of increasing their mission assurance? First and foremost, we're listening to our customers. We're making sure that we stay tightly aligned, that we are collaborating with them, not only to understand their requirements, but also to be able to inform some of the discussions that are happening around policy and governance, and trying to make sure that those stakeholders are keeping in mind some of the unique factors that need to be considered as it relates to cloud, and that we're increasingly enhancing and supporting cloud adoption. Also, compliance, understand that our customers cannot afford to compromise on compliance. We are listening to you in terms of the number of services that we offer within our compliance programs, just to let you know some of the progress there and how we've been listening and are increasing the number of services that we're offering. We currently have 21 services that are authorized at the high baseline within GovCloud for the FedRAMP program. We have 12 services that are in queue. These services are, at different states in terms of progress. They're either with our 3PAO assessor, or they're actually in the JAB for review. Outside of FedRAMP, we're looking at ways to increase the number of services that we have in the pipeline to DISA for impact level 5. So you'll also see an uptick in the number of services that we're offering in that compliance program. As it relates to service launches, absolutely, we're listening to you. One of the things we often hear from our customers is, we need more services. Where are the services? So we have been hearing you, just so that you can understand the progress that's being made. Have some quick numbers for you. Last year, we launched over 100 services and features in the GovCloud region. This year, as of the end of this month, we're on target to launch over 80. services and features. So that's a good amount of progress that we are making in response to what you guys are telling us you want to see in the region. We've had some pretty big launches this year. First, of course, with the third availability zone from an infrastructure standpoint. We have gone out with our latest and greatest EC2 compute instances. Customers are doing awesome things in terms of their software development with container services, so we've been very responsive in bringing those services online, as well as networking and security capabilities that we've been offering as well. And I believe, Teresa, you probably heard her mention some earlier today, and I can't forget Aurora. That's not here, but we're very excited about Aurora and having that available as a database solution for our customers. So, example of a few customers who are actually modernizing on GovCloud, on the GovCloud platform today. And many of these, they have case studies and talks that they've done that you can actually go back and reference and read a little bit about what they've done. Department of Justice, Department of Veteran Affairs, the Department of Defense, GSA, particularly 18F, the US Census Bureau. And we're really excited because today we have an opportunity to hear from Department of Treasury and some of the really interesting work that they're doing in modernizing around data architectures and specifically building out data lakes. And so I'd like to introduce Tony Peralta, who'll come and tell you a little bit about the awesome things that they're doing now. Tony is a manager of the data architecture branch at Bureau of Fiscal Service. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. As Nicci said, my name is Tony Peralta. I'm with the Fiscal Service. And I'm here today to kind of share our story, or our journey, where we are today with our data lake implementation, and kind of tie it around what our mission is. 1 second here. So just something I heard at the opening, I guess, which I should maybe regurgitate, is that any views or opinions expressed by me don't necessarily represent those of the Department of Treasury or the Bureau of the Fiscal Service. So just a small disclaimer. Learning as I go on that. So real quick, so today I'm going to cover, again, some of the impacts to us pursuing our mission assurance, right? I mean, there's things that obviously drag down our focus around that area, so I'll touch on some of those. Also, I'll touch a little bit on some of the trends in BI reporting and analytics that we saw very apparent, I guess, through some of the industry assessors like Gartner, and how that really solidified our desire to really, go toward a native AWS architecture type solution for our data lake implementation. Next, I'll share with you what that data lake approach looks like, touch on some of the use cases that we have, and then I'll open it up to some questions. So first, I guess, to start off this presentation, obviously, let's touch a little bit on the mission. As I read this, obviously, I need to understand what my role is to ensure that we are able to deliver on this. So as Fiscal Service, we aim to promote the financial integrity. So right there, that jumps out at me as like, okay, my responsibility and my role as a data architect is, of course, ensuring CIA, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data resources or assets for which we actually achieve our mission. Operational efficiency of the US government through exceptional accounting, that's not my swim lane. Financing, collections, payments, and shared services. And that's one area where I think I'll also share with you some of the partnerships we've had with our departmental offices, who are actually our shared service provider and access to AWS GovCloud. And as of today, I heard they're about 2 weeks away, from obtaining their FedRAMP High accreditation, maybe 3. Don't quote me on that. But they're close. So I think that's definitely serving our needs to ensure that our data assets are protected and we're able to execute on that platform with a very baseline data lake implementation, which should be very familiar. I'm sure you all have seen the different architectures out there. We're not really deviating from that. And I'll show you a little bit about that later. Okay, so let's jump into a little bit about the impacts to the mission, which I think are going to be very common to things that you guys probably maybe struggle with, and I hope they resonate. And maybe by show of hands, you can share with me what some of the impacts that we feel that we run up against within our organization that are common to you as well. So I thought I'd start off by just kind of starting with a riddle, right? So of course our mission relies heavily on it. It's very high in demand. A lot of effort goes into finding it, acquiring it. And obviously, it often gets away from us, and we end up wasting a lot of it. So does anybody want to take a stab at what I'm talking about with it? Anybody? Go ahead. Data, that's one of them. Okay. Any other ones? These are.
Funded dollars.
Do you hit that one? Yes, that's one of them. Anybody else?
People.
Okay, yes, that falls under the resources. Missing one more. Somebody can guess it. IT, that's another one. That's a good one. Time, bingo, right there. So yes, time and resources that we lose on managing our IT infrastructure truly takes away from other things, right? And I think other things may resonate with you are basically achieving our mission objectives. So, even yesterday I got reminded of this as I was engaged in a meeting talking about how we needed to get off a storage array because, we had to do some maintenance for it, and it was a, let's put out the fire type of thing. And it really it was like an hour-long meeting discussing these things. And I was thinking to myself, we should not be having this meeting at this day and age when we have automation, DevOps, we have S3 object stores, we have elastic block storage, and these are things that we can now obviously offload to others to handle, like AWS, and we can focus really on our mission objectives. So that really, truly is what it is in this particular case. So this kind of is representative. I put this together just to kind of represent, maybe somewhat resembles what a typical enterprise data warehouse is within your organization. Obviously, it supports business intelligence, some desktop analytics from your, data scientists or whoever it may be. And obviously, in order to get some value off of your data, of course, it has to be clean. You have to be able to make sense of it. So this is kind of what our current state is. I mean, I'm sure many of you, this look familiar, your typical stack of your enterprise data warehouse. So let's kind of, jump into it a little bit and see if, our house of pain kind of looks a little bit maybe like yours. So we have obviously typical ETL activities to support our enterprise data warehouse. From a business intelligence standpoint, obviously we are using reporting tools, some BI solutions, and both of these, really come at a very cost, a lot of overhead, right? We have program management teams that oversee activities for ETL. We're using proprietary solutions that obviously involve licensing, technical refreshes for new versions that can run into like 1 year, 2 year implementations. From a BI reporting standpoint, we've made a decision to adopt a solution that is very niche in nature, so it requires very high premium analysts to be able to produce some of the outputs. So again, these are pain points that we found were no longer necessary, and really, we wanted to really tackle this as hey, let's no longer support. If it's not broken, don't fix it. I mean, this kind of fits the model of a lot of different enterprise data warehouses within our organization. And then you look at each one of these things and how they're hosted on premise, and of course you can resonate with them. They're up and running 24/7, 365 days a year, and usually we have multiple footprints of it, right? You have your production, you have your development, user acceptance, and all those. So some of the activities, again, that we're trying to optimize within the implementation of our data lake on the AWS platform is to really mitigate, I guess, some of those pain points around cost, around overhead. Another one is, the risks associated with some of the analysis that takes place. I mean, many of you are familiar with, to get insights into your data, well, you need to pull it from your enterprise data warehouse, do some desktop analytics. You produce your output in a short burst of time. And so, how much of that is really cleaned up is left in like file systems and things of that nature. So we're also addressing this from a data security standpoint, in that we're trying to mitigate that practice and create really a cohesive kind of like centralized environment within the AWS cloud, where analysts can actually perform their analysis of data, produce outputs, but it's all really self-contained in a secure environment. So that's one thing that we're really looking forward to doing. Turnaround time for IT, again, we want to be able to respond to business requirements that are around data. In today's day and age, where we have a lot of our stuff hosted on premise, that takes some time. If we get influx of new business and sometimes we can't respond to it, or we miss those opportunities because we're not nimble enough to respond to these things. Many of you are familiar, again, with the upfront cost of IT. So you project these things out, you get your bill, and that's kind of what carries you for the remainder of the fiscal year. So those are, again, other things that we want to disrupt. We want to change that a little bit to a more pay-as-you-go model and, the benefits of going to the cloud. So again, this is kind of representative of our current state. This is what we're really desperately trying to drive away from. So let me talk a little bit about what really solidified our decisions around AWS, using some native AWS services, and share a little bit about the story, our journey with the data lake, which started really around the 2013, I think is when we started with a proof of concept. Again, using AWS services, but we started to kind of go into some of the proprietary Hadoop distributions that are out there. Not to take anything away from them, but I mean, it was an effective proof of concept. But I think as we started our journey, it was around the 2015, 2014 time frame where we started to do some analysis on industry trends, and we found that within Gartner's assessment of industry and some of the solutions for BI, business intelligence and analytics, we started to see some drastic change. And I don't know if many of you are familiar with some of the things that started to really happen in those trends, but we really started to see a lot of the monolithic solutions that were supporting analytics kind of dropping off the map. I won't mention them to protect the innocent, but if you do take a look at some of those throughout the years, when you see solutions like, and not to take away from them and their capabilities, but when you see solutions like Qlik and like Tableau now rising at the top of some of these large monolithic solutions that traditionally have been really the leaders on this space, we thought, wait a minute, let's dig a little bit further here and peel the onion and find out what's really driving this. And I think that's really when we came to realize that industry was really embracing the use of cloud and maybe using some more of these lighter self-service supporting type tools to actually gain insights into their data. So sure enough, that was really the catalyst for us to say, okay, we're moving away from our proof of concept using proprietary Hadoop distribution type vendor solutions and really sticking to a more baseline kind of native AWS solutions that are representative, that can basically produce a data lake type functionalities for our business. Some of the benefits, of course, that we saw right then and there were that by embracing native AWS solutions and the pay-as-you-go model, it was no longer the thought of like, hey, we need to get a large, as I mentioned earlier, large monolithic solution that maybe more than what we really need, maybe more than what we're really capable of today. Sure, we aspire to do things today that we see in the industry of deep learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence. Yeah, who doesn't want to get into that space and really gain some true insights from their data resources? But we have to be realistic and say we're not there. We don't need that big Mercedes-Benz, so to speak. Let's start with a pay-as-you-go model, and let's basically align our true capabilities with our IT infrastructure in the cloud. So next, I'll share with you kind of what our data lake approach. As I mentioned, we established a partnership with a shared service provider at the US Department of Treasury departmental offices. Now, as I said, they're in the process of obtaining their FedRAMP High accreditation. They're offering shared services. And in essence, we're one of the first workloads on that platform. And so we're looking forward to growing our capabilities through their service offerings. So as I suggested earlier, through the migration of our on-premise enterprise data warehouse to the construct, and this kind of represents a little bit what some of the core pieces that you see out there from a data lake implementation. Obviously, S3 is at the core of this. We have DynamoDB for our data catalog. We have EMR and using Spark for a lot of our different ways in which we are going to engage our data. If you look on the far right, you see the different notebooks like Zeppelin and Jupyter. Obviously those who are very heavy on Python and they want to invoke PySpark. Those are just different ways in which you can engage either your raw data or, of course, if you're going against more curated data, which would now be our evolved representation of our enterprise data warehouse through Redshift. And of course we have some integration points. I mean, today we do have some public-facing outputs from our financial information. We call it the Financial Information Repository, which known as the FIR within our organization, but it's similar to, I think, some of the other platforms like USA Spending and a lot of efforts around the Data Act and transparency.gov. So the FER is just another conduit to insights into how we're doing from a financial management standpoint. So again, I think the constructs are very familiar. I think you've seen probably this format for organizations like Nordstrom's, like Netflix. They all kind of have this initial. So logically, this is kind of what we're shooting for. No major bells and whistles. Obviously, Tableau is now going to really represent. Tableau Server is going to allow us to really provide that self-service. Today, some of our methodologies around producing outputs for our organization require us really to get third parties and requirements to go back and forth in that, discussions around what our outputs are going to be. And then when the dust settles, we have a static output that really doesn't fulfill our needs. So I think by going with this approach, with this model, it really puts the owners of producing these data outputs to our business, to actually our business owners, and giving them more flexibility to do a lot of more self-service analytics, self-service data analysis. So make sure I touch on all the points here. And as I mentioned, future capabilities like machine learning, the platform itself lends itself for those type of practices. We're not there yet, but when we're ready, we'll have the platform ready to support those type of endeavors. Everything is code. Let's talk about automation. So that's another, obviously, key piece of what we're trying to accomplish through DevOps. One of my colleagues and I were at a presentation by Ansible the other day, and I captured in one of the presentations, they said, isolated automation is nothing but, produces nothing but, isolated, capabilities within the organization. But he says really building a true culture of automation, across the organization through standards and automation, that really is what embraces an actual automated company, I guess you would say. So those are things that we're striving for, is to establish early on some of those automation best practices and DevOps, things that we currently don't have in place. All right, next here. So now I'm going to share with you some of our use cases and obviously some of the clear benefits I may have already hinted at. So one of the key goals, I guess, that we want to achieve through some activities that we don't do, that we're not capable of doing today within our existing architecture, is leveraging unstructured data. So our business relies on call centers, which I'm sure you all are very familiar with. You manage them, but there's a lot of good information in those conversations too. In our case, we're in collections, so we're trying to resolve delinquent debt for the federal government and different agencies. So it's important for us to make sure that, first of all, we're providing or enhancing the citizen experience. So making sure that every interaction with, from a citizen to their government is as pleasant as productive as possible, not only to get the services that you expect from your government, but also, kind of self-serving, I guess you would say, but making sure that we're able to be effective in ensuring that we're, meeting our mission objectives. So some of the use cases, again, exploiting hidden unstructured data, that's definitely, I just touched on that. So with the voice files, what we have set up currently within our deployment, our implementation is, we have the capability of ingesting large numbers of voice files, which then get transcribed to text. We use some models to do some sentiment analysis on those text files, and they can basically produce the outputs and put them into Redshift for Tableau to then demonstrate in real time kind of how our calls are being handled by our call center. So that again is a capability that we didn't have before. So that's just one of our initial capabilities that we're exploring on our data lake platform. Deep learning through recognition, that's very new, but already we can kind of think about some future cases around that. I'm sure you all maybe have some very manual type processes that require eyes on documents to verify debt or verify other things. So we're looking at ways that maybe leveraging recognition down the road to really help us use some of that deep learning to basically use algorithms to basically fulfill that type of function and take the manual process out of it. Another big use case for us is actually moving away from the batch world. I'm sure many of you can appreciate the opportunity to gain insights into your data in near real time. It's great to see dashboards that are current as of like the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes, as opposed to, hey, we got to wait till tomorrow to get that report with the information. So those are some of the things that we're aspiring to leverage. I mentioned real-time analytics, and this touches, I guess, on some of the things that Nicci touched on as far as like the AWS GovCloud services. You know, we're hungry for more of them, right? So a lot of these Kinesis capabilities obviously are not available in GovCloud today, so we would like to see those. Others so I mentioned Redshift. So Redshift is another tool that, yeah, we are looking forward to working with, but it would be great if we had Redshift Spectrum, you know, lower our costs, being able to leverage data on S3 natively directly through Redshift. Another one is, of course, Glue. Many of you could probably appreciate the value that Glue brings to a data lake or enterprise data warehouse in the cloud. I mean, the ETL capabilities from that solution are very promising and are something that we can't wait to get our hands on. Let's see. So really, this ties to our benefits, right? So, I mean, migrating our enterprise data warehouse to a GovCloud data lake is going to maybe provide us a little bit more return on investment. It's going to help us, you know, find more time, more resources, however you want to define resources, what resources means to you, people, is it money, you know, whatever else it may be. But the reality is that we're looking to you know, provide some relief to the time that we spent really managing our IT infrastructure and focusing more on the mission. We believe that by, you know, moving our workload to the cloud, you know, a lot of time we spent with our IT shop talking, like I said, about storage, about servers, about, you know, identity management, you know, getting accounts for users, that those things will get flushed out a little bit better. We'll embrace automation, and again, we can keep calm and focus on our mission. I think I touched on some of these already, you know, less wasting of time, building new. And I think this is one of the key things that we learned from FINRA, which is one of the, I guess, inspirations as we entered this space, and was how they, you know, basically, how many of you are familiar with FINRA's story? I mean, I'm sure, yeah, a lot of people here. I mean, what they've done is really amazing. It belittles anything that we'll be doing in this time frame, but I think that was a true inspiration to say, hey, if they were capable of really taking massive workloads that are doing some, you know, just crazy processing, you know, massive amounts of data and moving all that workload into the cloud, that really was the driver for us to, you know, try and pursue and do the same thing. But you know, when I asked in some of the presentations, I was like, hey, you know, everybody focuses on cost. Yeah, we want to move to the cloud because it saves costs and this and that. So I naturally asked the question, hey, about how much did you save with your migration? And you always hear the number about, like, you know, anywhere between 40 and 60% ROI, and I think that's pretty common. But you know, something that still resonates with me today is the understanding that, you know, the savings are great, and you know, for those of you that are engaged in this space and working toward, you know, migrating your workloads to the cloud, sure, you'll realize the savings, you'll get your pat on the back from your executives, and it'll be great. But soon enough, that's going to become rear view mirror type gain. I think what really came out of that question was the realization that once you do make this shift to the cloud, it's really the hidden kind of a prize, which is, of course, the disruption to your workforce. It's really to challenging your workforce to get up to speed and working in this environment and really creating an engaged workforce. Not only that, but I mean, think about, you know, for those of you, you know, who, you know, let's say you were looking for a job today. I mean, would you want to go work for an organization that has kind of like the outdated data warehouse type deployment? Or would you want to work for an organization that's embracing automation, using Ansible, using cloud? I mean, if you're fresh out of college and looking for a job, you know, I think it's pretty clear which one you would pick, because it's the one that's going to be more challenging, it's going to give you more opportunities. So I think that really, you know, at the end of all the savings and all the advantages, that's the one that I'm really looking forward to. I'm really looking to seeing our IT organization really just grow and really get, you know, some amazing gains on that front. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much. I might have ended a little bit early, but I want to thank you very much for listening to me today. And if you have any questions, by all means, please let me know.
So certainly we can take questions if anyone has questions. Try that, Tony, on yourself.
Questions?
So, oh, there we go.
Okay. Yes.
How did the monolithic old line vendors accommodate and work with you when you were moving to the cloud?
Well, I think they're making some changes to their models from what I've understood. A lot of them obviously are now incorporating cloud and integrations with S3 to use that as a data source. So I mean, I think many of you have been exposed to a lot of these monolithic solutions, whether it be like the Oracles, IBMs, the SASs, and all these. They are kind of changing their architectures to really integrate with cloud more in a more streamlined fashion. So I think by the time we were working with some of those initial proof of concepts where we were actually using cloud technologies, but we saw some of the same thing. I mean, what's really the benefit of running something on premise with like a Hadoop distribution that has 3x times your footprint of data, still requires a bunch of virtual servers, still requires the management of those servers even in the cloud? It just didn't make sense to us. I mean, why not go to the managed services where you no longer have to worry about any of those things? But I think, in realization that maybe organizations like ourselves are realizing that and are trying to use more of the native services, I think they're making those adjustments, in my opinion, that, they're trying to embrace a lot of that integration with cloud technologies. Yep, sure. Well, I think the partnership with our departmental offices, and obviously the fact that they're getting the FedRAMP High accreditation, the fact that they've already been doing this for a while in the FedRAMP moderate space that they have. I think just the sheer number of controls that are in place that are obviously accepted by FedRAMP, and they are controls that would support FISMA. In this particular case, obviously FISMA high systems and lower. A lot of our systems are FISMA moderate, so we will benefit from a lot of the added controls that are in place. But I think we just wanted to make sure that there's a lot of interest within our organization of what we're doing. So other areas are also looking at who still have that that enterprise data warehouse model that I showed early. And of course, naturally, they're looking at what we're doing. We're kind of paving the way, and they are very interested in also moving their workloads to the cloud as well. But one of the key things there is that it's a FedRAMP High environment, but as I say, you put one FISMA moderate system into like a data lake, you get a second one in there, you start adding 3 or 4, and it now raises the the level of criticality where maybe it'll be nice for us to have those FISMA High controls in place. In the back.
Sure, you talked about skills needed, but you went ahead and made the move before you had them. Were they for operations in the cloud environment? And if they are, how did you establish the wisdom of making the change to begin with if you didn't have the cloud skills?
Right. So that's a great question, because I think going through the governance toward the implementation, working with our security folks, for example, their perspective was it was clear to me that, like, Tony, you decided to help your organization move in this direction, but you didn't account from a timing perspective and being ready for it is changing the culture. And those folks, I mean, not to knock them down, but I'm saying sometimes we'd be in conversations with our IT staff, and they would say, "Oh, excuse me, what does AWS mean?" And I'm sure you guys are familiar with that as well. So there's still a lot of legwork to kind of bring our organization and our culture up to par with that. Now, as far as the analytical capabilities, well, those who are doing models today and are with desktop solutions, we're just putting like our studio on the cloud and being able to do some of those things at scale, as opposed to running them on desktops, which of course are bound by the compute of the desktop itself. So there's still a lot of work to be done on, I guess, bringing the rest of our organization with us. And so we have to work with our database team and say, hey, now this is all you do on premise. Let's work a little bit on how you can support us here in the cloud. And automation obviously is key to, but it's making them part of that, right? It's saying, hey, we put this automation in place, but you should be the one providing oversight to this and taking.
Do you use outside contractors to help make you feel comfortable with this?
For the initial implementation, yes, we did. So through our shared service, yes, there were some third parties that helped us get kind of the initial footprint. But now, of course, we're coming back and we're trying to, obviously, to your point, getting the rest of the organization on board and supporting us on the platform. So we're dragging them along with us. Any others? I think we're, well, got a couple minutes.
I know that it may be interesting for the audience to hear. You guys went through a pretty extensive AOA in evaluating AWS native tools versus third-party tools for your data lake implementation. If you can maybe share a little bit about that
Yeah.
process and what you guys actually looked at in terms of making what deciding factors went into that evaluation.
Yeah, and I touched on that a little bit in our presentation where like we started a proof of concept with the data lake using some of those proprietary Hadoop solutions. And so I think one of the key drivers there was realizing how much additional management of that virtual IT infrastructure, even in the cloud, but to support that third-party solution. So that's when we saw the trends in industry, and it was clear to us that we wanted to leverage as much as possible the native AWS services.
Absolutely. Yes.
When will we see EFS in February?
So the answer is soon, if you'd like, or eventually, I should say. And if you'd like a more detailed answer, assuming that we have an NDA in place, we could talk about that a little bit later. But it is something that we're currently looking at. It's a highly requested service from our customers. I would say 90% of what is on the GovCloud roadmap is driven directly by feedback that we get from you guys, and EFS is certainly a service that we've heard lots about and have been working with the service teams in terms of looking at a target launch date for the region. Yes.
Have you been through refactoring, re-architecting some of your monolithic existing apps?
Well, yeah, well, not so much the apps because it is an enterprise data warehouse. So for the application portions of what I just described are basically the interfaces that folks will be using in that self-service model. So like the Zeppelin notebooks, we didn't have anything like that in place before. Our studio server, that's something we didn't have in place before. So those are kind of like the new interfaces to our data, whether it be in a raw format or obviously a relational, post-ETL kind of process on Redshift. So really from an application perspective, there's nothing really that resembles that. It's more like these tools and the ways in which an analyst or a business user engages with the data. Executives, obviously, through Tableau dashboards or visualizations. Data scientists, obviously, our studio, Zeppelin. And for those who just want to query, we have query tools on a lot of our Bastion hosts, and so that can be an interface to the data.
All right. Well, thank you guys. We appreciate
Thank you very much.
coming, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks.